G'day guys, my name is Wildkard, welcome back to my channel. It's Tuesday, it's news day. Let's take a look at what's been happening in the world of rugby. Today we're going to look at some news from Europe, we're going to look at Eddie Jones' potential replacement, we're going to talk about some news from South Africa, and most importantly, we're going to talk about Super Rugby and Rugby Australia. This video might get a little bit ranty, I'll try not to yell. We're going to talk about, Wallabies, we're going to talk about the Rugby Australia, it's pretty close to my heart. And the issues that is associated with the current state of Australian rugby. So let's get on with it. Let's talk about it. First up, the England-Australian tour coming up in July. The 3 venues has been set. And the venues are, the first game is going to be in Perth, then in Brisbane, and the final game in Sydney. And there has been a lot of uproar about the Sydney venue that's been chosen. It's chosen at the Sydney Cricket Ground, which is designed to play cricket, and obviously, you know, cricket is a circular stadium, and obviously the viewing for the fans is not very good for rugby, as the rugby field is further away in the center of the field from the actual stadium, around the stadium. So the fans are sitting further away from the actual the actual field that rugby is played on. So there's a bit of a complaint out of that from the fans. And you might be wondering, why is this game played in the SCG, the Sydney Cricket Ground? Well, let me explain to you. And this goes to like a larger issue with Australian rugby as well. Rugby in Australia is a privileged sport. You need to be somewhat wealthy to even be participating in the sport, okay? If you didn't go to a private school, there's absolutely no reason for you to even play rugby, okay? That's just how it is. That's what they do in Rugby Australia, right? And you wonder why it's played at Sydney Cricket Ground? Because the Sydney Cricket Ground is right here in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. It's literally just down the road from the most wealthiest, affluential people in the world. Alright, not just in Australia, but in the world. Some of the wealthiest people in the world lives just down the road from here. Instead of going, 2 hours away to Western Sydney, I mean, like, who cares about rugby nowadays in Western Sydney, right? Like, Union. Just put it in front of the doorsteps to the wealthiest people where your audience is actually from. That, by the way, this is, I live in this area as well, sorry. That's why I live in this area. And also Rugby Australia, just a bit of fun fact, is right here as well. Rugby Australia is just right here, right next door. And then usually the old stadium was here, like Sydney New Stadium. So there used to be a stadium right here that's designed for rugby where the Waratahs play. That was been demolished. A new stadium's been built, but it's not finished yet. So it's kind of like close from home for Rugby Australia. But in reality, it's the fact that rugby is, they're going to get a better turnout here because it's closer to their core audience than if they played in Western Sydney. Because rugby is a privileged sport in Australia. And it's the failure of Rugby Australia to the utmost, the utmost round of failures of Rugby Australia that this is becoming the case. If they play the game in Western Sydney, they're going to have a really poor turnout. We saw the Bledisloe Cup, I think, might be last year or the year before. There was like $40,000 people restriction. There was some restriction applied. I think they're allowed to have 40,000 people or something in the stadium, and they only had like 15,000 people showing up because it was in Western Sydney. And nobody wanted to travel there to just watch a Bledisloe Cup game. There was like literally like 10,000 people or 15,000 people for Bledisloe Cup game. Like, they don't want that happening again. They want it to be closer to their audience, closer to the people that they're catering the sports for. The rich, the wealthy, the affluential, right? And as a result, so basically, the government has stepped in to back the bid for Australia to host the Rugby World Cup in 2027. So that's all good to go. And obviously, the Rugby Australia is under the pump to bolster the sport, to make it more appealing to the public. It's so funny. This is the reason why like the fact that they're coming out and say these things like, try to do these things like make the sport, have these committees, have these meetings to try to make the sport more like entertaining, is precisely the reason why the sport is failing. Because the sport itself doesn't need a governing body to come up with strategies or to come up with law changes to the game to make the game entertaining. The sport itself is already entertaining. You have to grow the sport from grassroots to get the fans to be involved. It's not about you changing the laws that or telling the referee to not to like overlook penalties, to overlook to change the rules. That's not how you make the sport appealing. And to bitch and whine about that is precisely the reason why the sport is failing, because you have failed to adapt to a changing environment. The market has changed. The demands for the sport has changed. Player safety is becoming more and more important. The market is moving, and Rugby Australia has failed to adapt, and to some extent New Zealand Rugby as well, to fail to adapt to the changes and still hanging on to the old ideology of the sport from 10 years ago and trying to, come up with ways to bring the sport back to the way they used to be. It's gone. It's not coming back. You have to adapt, right? So here's some things. They talk about like how to make the Super Rugby more watchable, more entertaining, right? Here's some things that you can fix. I've got a small list here I want to go through. Here's some things you can list, right? First of all, this is less of a factor, this one, first point, less of a factor for Super Rugby New Zealand than is for Super Rugby Australia. There's a lot of time wasting on the field. Like, I don't want to see players getting massages in the middle of the field. If he's cramping, get him off the sideline and play on. They can play with the player out. Alright, I don't want to see people getting massages in the middle of the field. It's just absolutely time wasting. I can't, there's nothing else there. Stretch him off the field and play on. Okay? Like, there's the only reason you should stop if someone is like concussed on the ground, someone's got a serious injury. If they're just cramping, or if the bootlaces is undone, move on. Get them off the field and keep playing. New Zealand has done a bit better here. They kind of rush people through these sort of things. But Rugby Australia, this is literally the easiest, lowest fruit you can pick out of the tree. Move on. And also the scrummaging, so slow. I really don't understand. I watched some of the scrummaging from like the late 2000s. This is what you wanted, right? Why does it take a minute to pack a scrum? Like the scrums from not even like that long ago, 15 years ago, literally takes 10 seconds. People get together, bang, ball in, go. There's no need for the referee to pause for 30 seconds before the engagement, and then for the scrum to steady for another 10 seconds before the referee tells the halfback to put a ball in, right? The scrum should be packed and then boom, done in 5 seconds, engaged in less than 5 seconds, packed and engaged in less than 10 seconds in total, and then the ball should be put in the scrum instantly. If the halfback don't put the ball in, half arm, no repack, move on. Like, there's so much time wasting. Like, if you just go back and watch any of the scrums from like the 2000s, even earlier than that in the 90s, like literally the whole scrum is done in 15 seconds from packing, engagement to the ball in and getting the ball out. 15 seconds, gone. Now it takes 15 seconds for players to just walk to the bloody scrum. Takes so long. Short on penalties all day for wasting time. Okay? Just unbelievable stuff there. That's something that I really, really hate as well. And also, just the presentation of Australian rugby, okay? This is, again, an issue with Australian rugby more than the New Zealand rugby. The presentation, the footy fields, the actual grounds that you are playing rugby at looks dog shit. Literally looks like a pile of dump that's been thrown onto a grass field and nobody bothers to tidy it up, okay? So just so you know, like, what the difference, just so you know, I literally randomly picked 2 replays from, I don't even know when, just 2 random games played this year, okay? So you can be a judge yourself. So this is just a random game pick. I don't even know which round is this, 6? So this is last week. not even this week, like the week before. Reds playing Waratahs. Okay? Just have a look at this. Just have a look at this. Look at this. Look at this ground. Look at this ground. Like, what do you call that? It literally looks like a pile of dog shit. Like, you call this professional rugby? Watching a pile of dog shit on the ground there, right? Like, let's just go random frame. Like, just go to like, look at this. Look at this turf. What is this? What is this? Like, I don't like, just the presentation of this is garbage. Absolute garbage. Like, who the hell? Like, look at this. What is this garbage? Like, this ground is absolutely dog shit. Just the presentation. And you might be like, oh, come on, mate, you're just being too harsh. Again, this is a random game I picked on the weekend. Crusaders Highlanders. This is this weekend, so this is a gameplay between Crusaders Highlanders. Look at this. This is like, you don't see fucking turd-looking stuff on the ground. This looks like a pitch, like a proper pitch, right? Like, you don't. This is scrum. You don't see brown dirt popped out everywhere. They have scrums in New Zealand, right? Look, this doesn't look like some cattle just trotted over the place before the game started. No, like, what is this? The just basic presentation of, like, the game. It's awful. So something that, again, lowest reaching fruit there for Rugby Australia to finish. And also, color commentary. There's absolutely no color commentary in Australia and in New Zealand. So both the commentary teams, I'm going to criticize a bit here. So sometimes, obviously, there's law changes to safety. And instead of just, you know, promoting the sport, provide me with entertaining commentary that explains to me what's happening on the field, the commentators goes ahead and have a rant about the law changes and how how that's poor decisions from the referee when they're just following the guidelines for World Rugby. It is your job as commentators to make it entertaining. It's not your job to complain about law changes from World Rugby. It's your job to promote the change and make it entertaining for the fans to watch. Something that all the commentators need to understand. And it's awful to watch when the commentators are bitching and complaining about the referee decision, especially when the referee decision is correct. It's just awful. And, like, you're not the only sport in the world that has to deal with law changes. The UFC went from just an absolute free-for-all brawl in the 90s to the proper tidied up rules where they removed a lot of the illegal stuff to make it a legitimate sport, to legitimize the sport, to make it more marketable, to make it more viewable, to make it professional, and to make it bigger, more profitable than it has ever been. It's just failing management. That's the reason. The commentary is not promoting the sport in the right light. You complaining about the laws changing? You should be fired. You shouldn't be a commentator in the sport. You should be fired and gone. It's just unbelievable. The UFC turned from what's called the human cockfighting to a legitimate sport by tidying up the sport. Whereas rugby is trying to somehow reverse it back to the old ways where people get knocked out of the field and they just keep on playing, right? Back in the brutal days when people, unbelievable stuff, unbelievable, like, poor commentary there. And finally, this is more to Australian rugby than New Zealand. Cut the woke shit. Nobody gives a fuck. You're the most privileged people in the fucking country. You don't need to tell everybody else in the country how fucking woke you are. Just cut the shit and play rugby. Fuck. Okay? And finally, this is probably more to do with Australia than New Zealand as well, right? For the players, there is no incentive for them to win every game because there's a couple of reasons. One, obviously, the pay structure could be a reason. There's a salary cap for the Australian rugby. So obviously, everyone's paid by a set salary. I think they should bring back like a bonus pay system. Like you're winning again, you get paid bonus, right? Instead of just having a salary cap that everybody gets paid this fixed amount, winning or losing, there needs to be bonuses, incentives for people to perform better. And also there needs to be threats of players being dropped to like club rugby if they don't perform. So there needs to be some kind of consequences in winning and losing. There's no consequences right now. Like, you can see it. Like, the Australian rugby, there's times where it's just, yeah, we've lost, whatever. Let's just look ahead to next week. So I think that's probably something that they don't really do that in. Yeah, I think that's something that can be changed, can be looked into to actually make it more competitive on the field as well. But yeah, that's my kind of like rant about Rugby Australia. 16 minutes. Let me know your thoughts, okay? So let's quickly go through the rest of the news. So last week we saw the round 7 of Super Rugby. So again, there was a lot of interruption going into that game. The Fijian Druas had to relocate to the Gold Coast due to flooding, and their one of the coaches was in isolation due to COVID. Byrne Foley, who's currently playing in Japan, has talked about he wants to come back to play for Australia. So Australia currently is allowing 3 international players to return to play for the Wallabies. So Foley wants to be considered. He's got competition with Quaid, but will be good. More competition, the better. The Western Force has sacked the head coach Tim Sampson, and they are bringing in Simon Crone as the replacement coach. I thought Tim did a really good job for the Western Force, to be honest. The Force looked a lot better since last year, and they look to be improving. And they're like a serious competitive, serious threat this year as well. So I'm really surprised to see that he's gone. He will still be coaching till the end of the year, but I'm really surprised that they kind of decided to let him go. I don't really know about this Simon Cron guy. He's the assistant coach of the Waratahs, former assistant coach of Waratahs. So we should see how that goes. I'm a little bit disappointed and a little bit surprised. And obviously, one of the reasons is that the billionaire Andrew Foster, is it his name? Yeah, Andrew Forrest. He's basically coming in with a lot of money, backing the new coach, and he basically saying that he wants to build the Western Force into the best club in the world, because you might have to import a lot of the more All Blacks players to probably get there, but that's kind of like what he wants to do. But it's good to see that the Western Force is getting more money injected into their team. And the good news for the Blues, Beauden Barrett was out due to a concussion, and everybody was kind of worried. He looked pretty bad. But yeah, he's clear from concussion. He's going to be out for just 2 matches, and then he'll be back and ready to go. So I'm pretty happy about this because I'm a big fan of Beauden. I want to watch him play, and it's good to see him come back. So there was also a lot of talk about Jordie Barrett's performance on the weekend. So the Hurricanes had Jordie Barrett at 12 on the weekend, playing the inside center position. I thought he had a pretty, I don't want to say too bad. I think it was a pretty average game. He did look out of position at times, and literally, like, right at the beginning of the game, the first try Chiefs scored was because of a missed tackle from him. So he did look like out of position at times, and his timing and everything in defense is a little bit off as well. I do think it needs a bit of work to get himself a bit better there. It is a difficult position to play, and for someone new in the position, yeah, he does have to have a bit of work to do. So yeah, this is kind of like echo that with some of the commentary from New Zealand as well. But I think so far he might still be the best option for 12 for the Hurricanes at the moment. So yeah, we have to see how the Hurricanes perform this upcoming weekend. So yeah, this was like a red card. Again, people were talking about so Caleb Clubb had a red card on the weekend, and I think it's like one of those things where it's 50-50. He kind of jumped up in the air to try to charge down a ball, and then bumped the kicker in the head while he was in the air and got a red card. So yeah, there's two sides to it. One side thinks that this shouldn't be a red card because if he just like bumped the person in the shoulder instead of in the head, this would just be like a penalty at most, right? But the fact that he bumped in the head just because of pure accident, it's a red card. So people thought maybe there's a bit of a, like obviously when he jumped in the air, there's no way for him to fly away, right? He's committed to try to do the charge down, and just complete unfortunate that he clipped the player in the head on the way down. And yeah, so yeah, there's two sides of things, but maybe there's something that the rules could be looked at. But I felt, you know, under the current guidelines, red card is a red card. There's also some talks, speculations that Suliasi Vunivalu, the former NRL player, is looking at going back to NRL. There's been a lot of talks, like last week we mentioned. Some people think that he should stay. His contract's coming up end of this year, and he's currently saying that he wants to play a few more games of Rugby Union first before he will decide whether or not he wants to move back to Rugby League or continue with Rugby Union. So he hasn't made a decision yet as to whether he wants to go back to Rugby League, but he wants to, at this stage, he's focused on making his return for the Reds, which is really good. Last year, when he was on the field, he was electrifying. I was really excited to see him, and I'm excited to see his return. Next up, we've got a blank page. Yeah, okay, so there's rugby URC, the URC United Rugby Championship. There's potential upset for the South Africans to host the finals. So there's still a lot of entertainment that's coming up for the sport. So the first time we saw the South African teams being added into the competition, and basically every team that visits South Africa had a pretty poor result. And as a result of that, there is a chance that potentially the South African teams could host the finals. We'll have to see how things pan out, but it's setting up to be a pretty cracking, entertaining finish towards the end of the game season anyway. So let's quickly finish off the news. Yeah, there was a bit of a coaching thing where Ronan O'Gara almost got slapped. It wasn't really much, it's a bit of fake news. Let's just move on to the next one. So England Rugby, there's been a lot of talk about replacing Eddie Jones. Obviously, am I lagging? I think I'm lagging a little bit, but let's just get through this before things get right. So yeah, Eddie Jones, there's been talks of him. Obviously, he's made the statement that he's going to retire. Not retire, but relinquish the English head coach from after the Rugby World Cup in 2023. And there has been some talks about recruiting a new coach for Eddie Jones. And obviously, on the forefront was to talking about getting English coach to replace Eddie Jones. But what the hell's going on? But Dean Richards, I think one of the guys from RFU, I think he might be one of the executives there. Anyway, one of the speakers from the RFU came out and said there was some talks about they're focusing on getting an English coach to replace him. He basically came out this week and said they're not looking at replacing him exclusively with English coaches. They open for all coaches from all around the world, and also they're looking at getting potentially Eddie Jones extending his coach if he wins the Rugby World Cup. So Eddie Jones could still be potentially leading England for Rugby World Cup if he wins it after 2023, if he wants to. So that door is still open for Eddie Jones as well. And obviously, Sir Woodward is not happy. He's come out and teamed up with his mate, Lawrence Deladio, to criticize the coach selection team in RFU. Basically saying that, what's his name? They wanted to, basically saying that Ian Ritchie and Bill Sweeney, the two directors that's deciding on the coach selection, they don't know what they're doing. They're basically saying, and they're saying that they should hire a director of rugby. They should hire a director of rugby to look for the coach on their behalf, to advise them on their behalf, to advise them who should be the next coach. So, Sir Clive Woodward is trying to looks like he's trying to find himself a new job here. But yeah, pretty interesting to see that. A bit more on England, on Wales rugby now. The Wales back row James Davies has retired as of 2nd of April, essentially, due to a concussion. So yeah. And then we have some more news from England. Joe Thokanasanga, the Fijian-born England winger, the bane of Australian rugby. If you are a Aussie rugby fan, which I think is like, I don't know, one of you. Anyway, you would remember this guy carving up the Wallabies a couple years ago for England. So maybe we'll see him again in July. But he was devastating. So yeah, it will be really interesting to see him back on the field, especially probably playing for England. He's quite a monster on the field. He's like, 110 kilos, and he runs like an absolute demon on the field, right? He's huge and he's fast and everything you want for a winger. And also the Owen Farrell, he returned to Saracens recently and he got a bit of a knock on the weekend. So he passed the HIA, but he's still gonna sit out for a bit for the HIA protocols. Malo Tuilangi also set to return. He was injured end of last year. He returned for England and he was set to, and he played for I think he played against South Africa for the first 5 minutes or something, where he scored a try and then he was taken off the field, and then he returned again in Six Nations. But before he could even play, during training runs, he hurt himself again. I think it was a quad issue. So he's set to return once again for what is it? Is he playing for Saracens? But anyway, he's set to return again to play from that injury now. Damien Delende, some news from South Africa now. Damien Delende, there's been talks of him quitting Munster and moving to another team. But there was talk of him going to Bath, but that's probably not on the radar at the moment. And so that opens the door for Damien Delende of where he could potentially go. So there's some speculation of him going to the Japanese top league or returning to South Africa. So we shall see how that goes. But I think he's probably going to go to the Japanese top league for the money. As much as the Springbok fans would love to have him back home, I feel like he might be too big of a talent to be. Yeah, we'll have to see. He's still in the prime of his career, and he really probably wants to make more money than playing for the South African teams. So he probably will go to Japan. We'll have to see. And then there is a bit of a tragedy as well from rugby. A woman playing for university clubs in England died after playing rugby. And she was only 20. So yeah, this was pretty sad. So yeah. Anyway, and then also the former Springbok coach Peter de Villiers, his wife was found dead in the pool. The police basically said there was no foul play involved, no evidence of foul play involved. So maybe, don't know, she just apparent drowning, but there doesn't seem to be any foul play involved in that. And do we have one more news? Yeah, so whatever. It's just some blunder in the referee. But yeah, anyway, 30-minute rugby. Quite a bit of ranting from me. Thank you for watching, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully this video is not too bad. There seems to be a bit of lag going on. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I do appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys this weekend for Super Rugby reviews. Cheers.